What's going on, everybody? This is Sean from LumixLive, and as you may notice, we are not actually live this week. Instead of skipping the stream because most of us are all out in Las Vegas for the NAB show, we wanted to make sure we at least got some stream out for everybody this week, and kind of talk about some of the cool things that I've started using a lot more of with the GH6, and just kind of talk about some of the cool things that you can do with it. So for those that don't know, NAB is going on the 24th through the 27th. We're all going to be out at the show, so this week, since we're traveling, getting everything ready, set up for the show, we couldn't do this live. But if you have questions and you want us to actually kind of interact, make sure to drop them in the comment section below, not the live chat. There will be a live chat because we don't want to stop any of you from have conversations with each other. But make sure to drop your questions down in the comment section, and then we can address them throughout the week and get back to you with some answers. But for this week, as you may have noticed from the title of this video, it's talking all about OpenGate and what is OpenGate, how does it work, how's it different than Anamorphic. Quick little tip, it's not really any different than Anamorphic modes in our cameras. And then, some of the cool things that you can do with it and ways that I've started utilizing it, and then some of the cool things that I do in post with it. So, let's kind of jump right into this. So to start with, we're actually filming this particular stream in OpenGate. So you can see that we're in 9x16 right now, but let's jump out to the actual full frame. As you can see, we've got the pillar boxes on the side. We are in 5.8K in 30 frames per second in the 420 10-bit long GOP recording mode that the GH6 offers. So what that means is that the actual resolution that I'm recording is 5760 by 4320. And then in Premiere, I'm just working in the edit of this video. I'm just editing it as a 3840 by 2160 9x16 output. So to start with, you can already see the first advantage here. One is that I can shoot wider than normal, but then crop into 9x16 or 16:9 and normalize my field of view and actually have the normal output that you'd all be expecting. So let's actually do that now. Let's go back to the 16:9 framing. So why does this become important, and how is this really kind of different than anamorphic shooting? Well, fundamentally, in the way that we've implemented the anamorphic functionality in a number of the GH series cameras primarily, they're pretty much the same. It's the same modes that you're going to be using. So anamorphic really just is dictated by the lenses that you put in front of the camera. And even that is starting to get a lot more open depending on what your output, kind of aspect ratios that you're going for. So with a lot of the modern anamorphic lenses that are coming out, you'll see that they're a 1.33, they're a 1.5, 1.6, or a 2x D-squeeze anamorphic, and each of those can correspond to a different output aspect ratio that you're going to get from D-squeezing the original footage. Now, in our case, with the Micro Four Thirds cameras, this has always been achieved by typically doing a 2x D-squeeze from a 4:3 aspect ratio image to get your classic CinemaScope look. And this is how most of the CinemaScope stuff has been filmed. And for those that are diehard anamorphic fans, I know I'm being very general in how I'm describing this. We'll have an entirely different topic and conversation on anamorphic separately. That one I want to have Matt Frazier on again with, and we did do a little bit of a stream about this a number of weeks ago. But the basics of this, if it's something that you've never heard of, anamorphic really revolves around the lens that you use to get a very specific look. And that look would be the oval bokeh in the background, as well as the kind of blue flares that you get that go across the frame. So we've all seen major blockbuster movies that in some cases may overuse anamorphic flaring, but that's a look that you can get. And the reality is, for a number of users, myself included, anamorphic is a ton of extra work and a very specific looking style that I'm probably never really going to have a real world use for. The vast majority of the things that I ever film are either for internal training material, it's for maybe a local bar that I might be doing some filming for, stuff like that, where I don't need it to look cinematic. It needs to be utilitarian because it needs to conform to what the client is asking me for. But, you know, I want to be as efficient with my time as I possibly can be when I'm actually out in the field. So how does this relate to using the anamorphic mode? Well, in the GH6 in particular, as you saw, we're recording in 5.8K, and just using the full canvas to actually record with for standard video. That means that in that 5.8K resolution, I have infinite flexibility for all of the different outputs that I may want to use this particular piece of footage for in any of the different outlets. And this is something that we've actually been getting a lot more feedback from. You know, working post houses are getting increased requests for, you know, multiple outputs or multiple deliverables from a specific project. You know, one client may be asking that they want a 16:9 for things like YouTube or Vimeo, or even for putting on displays. But at the same time, in that same project, they're probably also getting asked, and a lot of them are getting asked, for things like 9:16 for Instagram Reels or TikTok. Even Snapchat we're starting to see as, you know, an upcoming thing that people want higher quality for that their cell phones can't do. And the traditional way that we used to do this was you would shoot your 16:9 horizontally, and then if you needed a vertical, you would flip the camera vertically and then shoot it vertically. And you're even seeing some support equipment come out that's advertising about the ability to just hold the camera vertically and film. Well, we take a very different look at this. We say, why do that? Why go through the extra effort to have to film something twice, to, you know, block off your shots twice, to maybe risk adding a ton of extra time and a ton of extra cost? Because if you've got talent on site for, say, a commercial job, having to do multiple different takes, one horizontal, one vertical, having to carry multiple cameras, one rig setup is vertical, one rig setup is horizontal. Why have to go through that, or force yourself to have to go through that when you've got a camera, or you might be looking at getting a camera, like the GH6 that allows you to do this in one take? So to start off, that means that it's way more cost effective. Your time is way better controlled, so you're not having to spend as much time filming. And the deliverable that your client gets is going to look infinitely better because it's cohesive. It's going to look the same. The verbiage is going to be the same. If it's talking to camera piece, it's all going to be the same. You're not going to have to go through multiple different takes to make sure that the person says the phrasing or a statement the exact same way, or, you know, really having to go through all of the different steps of these different pieces. If you're working to be as efficient as you can, and you know that you want the same piece, you want the same look, the same style across the board, this camera allows you, and a couple of our other cameras, allows you to do this way more efficiently. So, like we've already seen, and we've already shown a couple of times, we're shooting in 5.8K. I'm delivering this in the 9:6 or 16:9 aspect ratio, but I can go further than that. I can then start applying things, at least the way I edit, and as a disclaimer, I am by no way a professional video editor. I am amateur at best. But I can take this 5.8K piece of footage, I can load it into a 9:16 or a 16:9 aspect ratio project that in my case is 3840 by 2160, and then I can just apply masks over this for my different aspect ratios depending on where I want to go. If I'm actually working on a project that natively needs to be 9:16, I can just take that full 5.8K version of it, run it in a project that's actually set up in a sequence as 9:16. I can set it up as 5:4, all of these different aspect ratios, and I know that I now have the maximum resolution that I actually need for this. So I'm not having to worry about, you know, oh no, do I have the right, you know, amount of data in my files to actually produce a high quality version of this. Even though things like Instagram and TikTok and, you know, all of those different platforms, even though we know that they're going to compress them down and they're going to be a lower resolution, In a lot of cases, you want to have a much higher quality master than you would if you just shot everything in 16 by 9. So the pitfall there is that 16 by 9 in 3840 by 2160 only has 2160 in vertical resolution. So if you needed to do a 4K vertical, you don't have the resolution for it in that ratio. You just don't. It's not there. So I can now take the entire height of my sensor, know that I've got more than enough resolution vertically and horizontally to output a 4K version of this. I have enough resolution to do a 4K version in 5x4, in 4x5, and then in all of my normal traditional aspect ratios. And, you know, instead of going on and on, I've already been going on for almost 11 minutes about this, let's actually jump over to my desktop and take a look at it, because it's a lot of fun. And hopefully this is something that some of you may take away and see as a cool way to actually, you know, maybe adopt into your particular shooting style. So yeah, let's jump over to my Premiere and yeah, kind of go from there. Let's take a look. All right, so as we can see here, you know, I'm looking at my Premiere kind of timeline for this particular video that we're actually watching. And there's a couple cool things that I just wanted to quickly show here. And as I said before, this is definitely not a class on how to use Premiere or any of that. So I know a ton of you are way better at editing video and creating content than I ever am. But I wanted to show a very simple, basic way that I can do this, at least as a way to demonstrate it. And this is one of the ways that I use to kind of demonstrate and visualize the different aspect ratios for video when I'm teaching someone about this. And so we can see I have my timeline here. I have my normal 4x3 aspect ratio open gate recording here. This is the entire video piece that we have here, and it's 11 minutes in the original cut. And like we said, we're doing this with the GH6. So I've got my XLR1 audio adapter attached to it. I've got my Sennheiser lavalier recording track 1 and 2 for my audio, and then track 3 and 4 are the onboard camera mics just in case something goes wrong. So I start with this as my base. Now, much wider than I would normally ever shoot, and we've already seen, as you've been watching so far, that, you know, there are some advantages here. But when it actually comes to showing these different effects and how this works, this is where I just went into Photoshop and I just created a couple simple different PNG files that are the different aspect ratios that I want to show. So when we go back to the main timeline here, you'll see if I start playing this, you'll see that it's coming through. We're looking at the footage here, and this is where I talk about the different aspect ratios. So here, all I did was I cut to the full 4x3 aspect ratio within a 3840 by 2160. So resolution's not really the point I'm trying to get across here. But I have the full 3840 by 2160 with the 5.8K being housed within that, so it's scaled down to this. But all I did was just apply that mask for my 9x16 crop. When I go into my 4x5 or my 5x4 crop here, so you can see this is my 4x5, you see that I have the full 4x3 aspect ratio, apply the crop. That's what I'm going to get out of it. If I was working on a timeline, it'd be different because the timeline would actually be in 4x5 or 5x4 or 9x16. So the principle's the same here. But then even in for my my actual 5x4 crop, so my landscape-oriented crop, I can then toggle back and forth quickly between here to show what the different aspect ratios are going to look like. And this just makes it super easy to kind of explain the flexibility that you have here. Now again, this is not how you would typically edit this, because with all of these edits that I've done here, it's always going to come out as 3840 by 2160. It's just going to have a mask over it. So my vertical and horizontal resolutions are not what we actually would be looking for. Ultimately, you would take this, go into your actual project, into your actual sequence, go to sequence setting, and then put in the resolutions that you actually want for your final output. So if I wanted this to be flipped to a 9x16, I would just do 2160 by 3840, that gets me that. If I legitimately wanted to do square for one of the platforms, I could very easily just click in here, change all of this stuff up, and have my project ready for it. So ultimately, as you can see, there is a ton of flexibility, and maybe shooting this way can become a really useful tool for those of you that are, you know that you're going to have to output multiple different aspect ratios for a project. There's way more that can go into this, and we're going to explore this kind of idea and this concept with open gate shooting a lot more over the next couple of months. It's just one of those aspects that, aside from the commonly known things of shooting in a wider aspect ratio or shooting in higher resolution, it's just becoming that much more of a tool that a lot of us really can start actually working with. You know, it's not taking that much more resources in the editing side. I mean, I edit on a fairly, what I would consider common Windows PC for this setup, but I can do this on my MacBook as well. You know, the codecs are becoming more efficient, the graphics processors are becoming way more efficient and actually working with a lot of these different codecs, whether you're an all-intra codec, an IPB codec, if you're shooting in ProRes, which that's a whole nother conversation with the GH6, you just have a lot of this flexibility, and the open gate recording functionality, whether you're in a Micro Four Thirds camera like the GH6, which is 4:3 aspect ratio, or if you're in a camera like the S1H and you're recording in the 3:2 aspect ratio, 6K, all of this applies. So it's a lot of fun. Thank you so much for, tuning in. This is obviously a very short stream. Any of our recorded streams are typically going to be a lot less length than the typical hour streams that we do. We don't have that back and forth, that kind of online troubleshooting and Q&A that we normally do. So thank you all for taking the time and checking this video out. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up. Maybe we've earned a subscription from you. As a reminder, we have a lot of other cool stuff going on. We have Lumix Pro services here in the US and globally. Links will be down in the description for all of that. I'll throw the graphics up right now. So we have a lot of cool stuff available in the support side for the camera. We are active over on our Instagram channel, so that's Lumix USA over on Instagram. So feel free to reach out and follow us. Links, like I said, are all down in the description below. And again, if you're going to be out in Las Vegas for NAB next week, make sure to stop by the Panasonic booth. Matt Frazier, Neil Matsumoto, myself, we're all going to be there, and it's going to be a lot of fun. I really look forward to actually talking to some of you in person. From what I've seen, I think some of you will be out there. So thank you all again so much. I look forward to coming back live maybe next week. It might be a recorded session next week. We might be doing a recap of NAB. Kind of just depends on what time I get back on Thursday next week. So with that, thanks everybody. I look forward to seeing you next week and hope you have a great weekend. We'll see you later.